And Russia, it did not just win battles on the ground, it is now winning boardroom wars in Brussels without firing a shot. Russia came armed with more than just tanks. It came with 3D: deals, discounts, and deferments. And while Ukraine fights a military war, Russia is fighting a total war with missiles, media, and now millet. Hello and welcome to Global News Factory. I'm your host Vikrant Thardok. The cracks in the Western fortress are now impossible to plaster over. For the first time since the war began 3 years ago, Ukraine is no longer NATO's darling. No big pledges, no bold statements, no war cries. Just an awkward silence wrapped in a one-page draft communique that reads more like an office memo than a wartime declaration. The draft document for NATO's summit on June 24th in The Hague is being hailed as historic, not for what it says, but for what it does not. Gone is the promise of 40 billion in aid. Gone is the thunderous talk of Ukraine joining NATO. Gone is the word aggressor next to Russia's name. It is now just Russia is a threat, like a bad weather forecast. Mildly inconvenient, please carry an umbrella. Even China, previously dubbed a decisive enabler of Russia's war machine, has vanished from the text. Not because Beijing changed its stance, but because Brussels is back in love with cheap Chinese exports and terrified of Trump's tariff tantrums. Let's be blunt, this is NATO's white flag. And Zelensky, he has just been tossed under the geopolitical bus again. The man who flew from country to country, begging for weapons, giving tear-soaked speeches, shaking every hand that would click for a photo, has now been ghosted by the very alliance he was fighting and bleeding for. The silence in that document is deafening. Behind the scenes, the truth is even more damning. NATO's real focus now? Not Ukraine, not Russia, just money. Trump is back on the scene, breathing fire and demanding NATO countries cough up not just 2% of their GDP, but 5%. So, forget bullets and tanks for Ukraine. The West is now budgeting for its own panic attack. And here is the final nail. NATO Chief Executive Officer, yes, a CEO whose job is to make profits, Mark Rutte himself admitted that Russia is outproducing the entire alliance in ammunition. In just 3 months, Moscow manufactures what NATO can barely cobble together in a year.
Russia produces in 3 months what the whole of NATO produces in a year. And its defense industrial base is expected to roll out 1,500 tanks, 3,000 armored vehicles, and 200 Iskander missiles this year alone. Russia could be ready to use military force against NATO within 5 years.
Let that sink in. The so-called world's strongest military alliance cannot even match a single country's arms production. Meanwhile, Europe is busy sending flowers to Beijing. EU officials are flying to China in July to stabilize trade ties, which is code for, sorry about the tough talk, can we still buy your stuff? So yes, this is a geopolitical surrender. Not with trumpets and treaties, but with silence, omission, and a firm closing of wallets. And Russia, it did not just win battles on the ground, it is now winning boardroom wars in Brussels without firing a shot. Moving on, you have heard of missile strikes and drone warfare. But welcome to the new front line, wheat. Russia is steamrolling Ukraine in the global grain market. And the damage is far more lasting than a crater in the ground. Let's break it down. Ukraine, once called the breadbasket of Europe, is losing the world's appetite. Egypt, Tunisia, Sudan, Ethiopia. Gone, poof! The grain from Ukraine is vanishing from African shelves faster than Western interest in the war. And the worst part? These were not fringe buyers. Egypt alone was a golden goose. Ukraine did not just miss a sale, it lost an entire customer base and the trust that came with it. Why? Because Russia came armed with more than just tanks. It came with 3D: deals, discounts, and deferments. While Ukraine's exporters nervously ask for full payment before loading, Russia rolls in with sweetheart terms. Pay later, we trust you. Oh, and how about some barter? You give us tea, oil, rupees, whatever is lying around. In markets like Africa, India, Bangladesh, Indonesia, that kind of flexibility is gold. And Russia knows it. In Kenya and Nigeria, where high protein wheat is the norm, Ukraine cannot even compete. Their wheat is usually of lesser quality, which might work in Europe's cozy kitchens but would not cut it where baking is big business. Meanwhile, Russian wheat is everywhere on African docks, in Asian ports, even slipping into Europe's backyard with deep price cuts and deferred payment plans. Ukraine still trying to patch together small grain batches for Europe. And here is the kicker: Russia is not just competing, it is dumping wheat like it is trying to flood the market. This is not just economics, it is a calculated geopolitical strike, a grain based siege. Russia's companies hedge against sanctions. They have created parallel trade networks, found alternate currencies, and developed new partnerships with China and India. Ukraine, on the other hand, is stuck playing defense, praying for Western handouts, and restricted by EU bureaucracy. So, what is the result? Ukraine is being squeezed out of the global grain trade one port at a time. Russia, with one eye on the battlefield and another on the wheat belt, is winning hearts, stomachs, and soft power in Africa and Asia. It's brutal, it's smart, it is working. And it proves yet again that while Ukraine fights a military war, Russia is fighting a total war with missiles, media, and now millet. Moving on to India now, the West loves democracy, they say. But only the kind that listens, obeys, and kneels. The moment a democracy starts thinking for itself, boom, suddenly it is authoritarian, nationalistic, problematic. Welcome to India's movement of clarity. For years, the Western playbook was clear. Use Ukraine to poke the Russian bear, wave the flag of democracy, and frame it all as a noble struggle for freedom. But that theater is getting old, and the Western audience is losing interest. Enter Act 2, South Asia, where Pakistan has been cast as the new strategic partner. Let that sink in. The man India accuses of masterminding attacks on tourists. Army Chief General Asim Munir of Pakistan is now a VIP invitee in Washington DC. Red carpet, toasts, smiles, all in the name of counter-terrorism. It is like inviting a pyromaniac to your fire safety seminar. And if that is not enough irony, CENTCOM Chief General Kurila calls Pakistan a phenomenal partner in the counter-terrorism world. Yes, phenomenal if the metric is nurturing extremist groups and then pretending to fight them for dollars. Meanwhile, Pakistan is being armed and upgraded not just with PR love but possibly with a German air defense system already being used in Ukraine. Why? To counter India's BrahMos missile, because apparently neutralizing India's edge over Pakistan is now a Western security objective. You see, it is a clear pattern. India's rise as an independent, self reliant, and unapologetically sovereign democracy makes Washington and Brussels very uncomfortable. Not because it endangers democracy, but because it threatens Western monopoly over the democratic narrative. So, yes, Pakistan is the new Ukraine, a pawn repainted as a partner. India? The next problem to be managed. What we are watching is not strategy, it is sabotage disguised as diplomacy. I'm moving on to my favorite country now, Hungary. Orban just gave Zelensky a diplomatic backhand that echoed across Europe. Zelensky, speaking to Hungary based media, tried to play tough, accusing Orban of meddling in Ukraine's domestic affairs and allegedly siding with Russia for political gain. But Hungary's prime minister did not flinch. He fired back with the kind of brutal honesty rarely seen in EU politics. Hungarians do not want to die for Ukraine. That one sentence says it all. Orban doubled down, saying Hungary would not be sending its money or sons to fight a war that is not theirs. Translation: not our circus, not our coffins. Zelensky, on the other hand, seemed to forget who he was talking to. Orban is not Brussels. He is not going to nod politely while being lectured, and especially not by someone who has been busy lobbying the EU to hand over billions and fast track Ukraine's EU dreams. Dreams Hungary does not share. And let's not miss the real fire here. Hungary is accusing Zelensky of openly supporting Hungary's opposition, a serious allegation in international diplomacy. That is not just interfering, that is regime change energy. Meanwhile, Orban is making it clear Ukraine's EU membership is not in Hungary's national interest. And unlike others in Europe, he is actually saying it out loud. What we are seeing here is not just a spat, it is the unraveling of the false narrative that EU is one when it comes to siding with Ukraine. One leader is still playing World War scripts, the other is reading from a survival manual. And right now, Orban is holding the mic and the veto power. And in the end, I want to thank our new official members of the channel, Bant Larson and Traveler SF. Thank you very much for subscribing to our membership program. And thank you all for staying with me. You're watching Global News Factory.